TV 10 and 55 Focus now continues.
And welcome back. I'm Richard Rose. We're here with our guest, George Maragos. He is the Nassau County Comptroller. And George, now here's a murky topic, trying to figure out how to fix Nassau County's property tax assessment system. Would you agree that it's broken?
Well, it was broken when we took it over. In 2009, the county paid out $116 million in property tax refunds. At the end of 2010, we had reduced that to $80 million, and we're probably going to reduce that to about $70 million by the end of 2011. So that's a substantial improvement.
That is a big improvement. That would be more than 50%, right?
About 50%, correct.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So then you've made strides there, but it's still $70 million. And it's such a big chunk of money that there's been all these debates and arguments about whether the county should be allowed to bond it out. And I believe the Nassau Interim Finance Authority says it should not be allowed to be bonded out.
That's right.
And what is your position on that?
Well, I think that, what I indicated, that there should be a transition period. We should not be long-term borrowing to pay for current expenses. But these property tax refunds usually date back 3, 4, 5 years. So an argument can be made that they're not current expenses to be paid from current revenues. And NIFA had allowed this practice to borrow to pay for the property tax refunds for the past 8 years.
In the Swazi administration.
That's correct.
But their argument was that it was only partially borrowed. It wasn't the full amount.
Well, but it was about $50 to $60 million a year. And now we brought that down to 60 to 70. So we're saying we should be allowed to borrow the same amount, at least during a transition period. And NIFA said, no, absolutely not. So that's changing the rules in the middle of the game. And
yeah,
we
because
didn't
now
think that
you have
was
to
fair.
account for that full amount.
That's right.
You
And
can't put it on a different ledger in the books and say it was bonded out. Now you've got to come up with $60, $70 million.
That's correct. And I say they changed the rules in the middle of the budget year. And now we have had in 2011 to absorb $50 million on expense that was not budgeted because we had prepared the budget, the 2011 budget, under the prior rules.
And $50 million would go a long way to not having some of these layoffs.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So is there any are you involved in the conversations with this Nassau Interim Finance Authority, which is a state oversight watchdog that was set up going back to previous county executive Galata before Swazi?
Right.
When finances were in trouble back then, they got the state on them, and the state took over the county's finances, backed off during the Swazi years, and now they're back in Nassau County's face about how to handle the finances. Do you have any conversations with this NIFA?
Well, indirectly, but I've been calling on them repeatedly and in public that they need to work with the administration to close the budget gap that we have and minimize the number of layoffs that we have to do. And so far, they have not come to the table. They are making demands, they're issuing orders, but they're not coming to the table with any constructive items to help the county.
Well, what happens in the end? Because this has been going, this dance like this that you're talking about has been going on for well over 6 months.
That's correct. And nothing has changed to the frustration of certainly myself and the administration. So it's time that they come together and play a constructive role to solve the fiscal problems of the county. Is
there some trigger that would cause them to have a more active role where they would pretty much take over the county's control?
Well, in fact, they have. They have to sign off on the budget, the new budget that is being proposed. They need to be assured that it is balanced.
Well, I mean, beyond that, is there a point to which they can come in and step over and take more control over the day-to-day decisions of how things are
To my
decided?
understanding, they don't have authority, or they've already taken control. In effect, they control the budget. They have to sign off on the borrowing. So, in effect, they have oversight, serious oversight. They don't have the administrative control. But if you restrict the spending and the budgeting, then you essentially have effective control.
So then I guess that brings me to the point that I'm trying to make, which is if at some point can they say they don't accept the budget that's put out there by the county executive?
Oh, absolutely.
And do anything further about it?
Absolutely. Well, if they don't accept the budget, they don't sign off on the budget, the budget does not become law, and therefore the county does not have any spending authority effective January 1st of 2012.
So that's
in
the
effect,
danger.
we could be looking, absolutely,
Right.
we could be looking at a shutdown in government because we will not have authorization to spend any money.
Yeah, I don't
And
think that's
a real
really
risk.
sunk in with people quite yet.
No, and that's why I'm emphasizing it here, because it has not been brought out before, and it's critical that it be realized that if NYFA doesn't sign off on the budget, we have no spending authorization, and we could be looking at a shutdown in government January 1st.
Well, now, for NYFA's behalf, they have complained that many of the devices that were used to try and say that budgets could be balanced or might be balanced or be closer to being balanced were not real, and that they were not likely to happen. Hope for changes in Albany about means to bring in more revenue. Some ideas about selling off or leasing out facilities that could bring in revenue that they didn't accept as well. Your thoughts on those criticisms? I mean, was it realistic that they
we
criticized
from the
those
Comptroller's
things?
office haven't accepted those as well, and that's why when we issued our report on the budget analysis, we said that those items are not realistic, they represent high risk, and they should not be included. But there are other items, though, that are reasonable, that should be included and be allowed. No budget line item is ever guaranteed. There's always risk. There's always administrative risk. Some revenues are going to come in lower. Others are going to come in higher. The same thing with expense. And it's incumbent on the county executive to manage the budget and the controller to monitor throughout the year to ensure that the budget is kept in balance.
Now, you said you recently released a report on how to fix the assessment system, which would go a long way to helping straighten out the county's finances. You wouldn't have that big hole, or you wouldn't have to have this hoped-for desire to be able to borrow the money, which you also then have to pay back the extra interest. What is it that you have come up with to further fix the system?
Well, we have indicated that the tax assessment system itself had was a computer system that didn't work. People didn't know how to use it, and the end result was that the assessments that were produced had a lot of errors, and consequently that's what generated the appeals and ultimately the refunds back to both the commercial clients as well as to the residential properties.
So the county executive indicated that now there's going to be an attempt to try to negotiate some of these differences and appeals before they ever get to the point of being stretched out into endless delays and cost.
That's right. So the efforts, that whole process now has been streamlined to review the appeals and to settle them before the assessment roll becomes final, and individuals or commercial property owners have to go to court and get a settlement that now the county needs to pay back on that on the difference between the original assessment and what the court has determined to be an overassessment. And it's important to stress that the county not only pays back the county portion of the property tax, but also pays back the school portion of the property tax and the town portion. And as we all know, the school portion is the most significant amount.
You concerned that this will lead a lot of people to challenge their assessment just in the hopes that they'll get a compromise?
No, because actually we're encouraging people to look at their assessment. If they feel that they're overassessed, to immediately file an appeal. And we've set the mechanism in place to review those appeals and to make the adjustments so that, one, they don't overpay, and two, the county does not incur the liability going forward.
All right, well, we're talking with George Maragos. He is the Nassau County Comptroller. Stay with us. There's a lot more yet ahead on Focus.